Welcome to the Naked Truth Report with your host, truth warrior and mythbuster Kathleen Wells. The place where we distinguish fact from fiction, where data is used to drive points home, and where Kathleen takes the position that Democrats and black politicians have destroyed black America. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report. Now, your host, Kathleen Wells.
And many Americans believe they're competing for jobs with a growing number of undocumented immigrants. That's according to a Rasmussen report survey conducted just last August. The poll also showed a racial divide between whites and blacks, showing that most white people do believe immigrants are taking jobs away from them, while most black respondents disagreed. To discuss this, we're being joined now by Mr. Ted Hayes. He's a civil rights activist. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Hayes. So can I ask you about this? Do you agree or disagree with the poll? Do you think, do African Americans think that illegal immigrants take jobs away from them?
Absolutely. I don't know where this other person's getting their information from, but I'm on the ground out here in Los Angeles. We call L.A. Occupy Los Angeles because we have lost all of our rights. Essentially, black people in L.A. have been indemnified. We can't even go in the neighborhoods that were once black for fear of getting shot, beaten up, threatened, what have you. So, no, and it's not just about jobs, it's about housing, education, health care. It's about our 14th Amendment birthright that they're stealing from us. And I don't blame the people. I do not blame the people. I blame my government for failing to protect us according to the Constitution of the United States.
Well, do you agree with President Trump, then, that illegal immigration hurts black citizens more than it does other Americans?
Oh, there's no question about it. And not just in the physical realm of jobs and housing, health care, but it's the whole realm of our identity. For example, you've heard of anchorism, that is anchor babies, women that come to the country illegally and they have a baby and that child becomes a citizen. That is totally wrong. That belongs to the freed slaves.
Hold on, you're saying you're talking about anchor babies. I want to touch on that. So you are against the so-called anchor babies, the babies that were born in the United States, given our Constitution, a constitutional right that those children are American citizens. So you disagree with that law?
That is not true. They've twisted that. It's a custom. If you please take the time and you go to my website and you can study it, tedhayes.us. They have twisted the 14th Amendment to mean them. It is not. Read the Civil Rights Act of 1866 where it identifies slaves. That was who it's for. It's been a custom, and we're going to prove it real soon. It's unfortunate that these poor people have been lied to and deceived. It's like someone's stealing something from somebody else and giving it to you, and you did not know it was stolen until you find out later the real owner comes and says, hey, you have my property. So
you're saying that this is somehow that law was misinterpreted and that...
Absolutely.
So you're saying the children that are born here, they to illegal immigrants should not be here?
They are what we call presumed citizens based on a custom that is not law, and it has to be rescinded at some point, because if not, we black people are going to be eliminated. We are already genocide in the minds of many people in this country. Whenever the issue of immigration, whether legal or illegal, comes up, you never hear them say, how does this affect black people? You're the first ones that's really brought us into the conversation, and I hope to be able to add more to this conversation as time goes on.
Now, I got to ask, Mr. Hayes, are you against immigration in general? Are you concerned about losing, like you said, jobs, losing housing, health care, education, political power, et cetera, to illegal immigrants? Are you against it in general?
I'm against illegal immigration, which I do not consider illegal immigration. I consider it an invasion, an occupation of our country, particularly in the inner cities, which are called so-called sanctuary cities. That is coming after us. It's an invasion. When it comes to legal immigration, sure, come to the front door. Article 1, Section 8 is for the willing immigrants. The 14th Amendment is for the people who were once slaves in this country, and it can't go on like that. Oh, one more point about that. A lot of immigrants come to this country, and they claim minority status, which therefore gives them civil rights access to something that does not belong to them. And we black folks, we chattel slave descendants, are being pushed further and further and further into the shadows of American society.
But Mr. Hayes, I think a lot of people...
So we need to straighten that up as well.
I would argue, though, Mr. Hayes, that a lot of people that say civil rights are human rights, don't you think a lot of people, whoever they are as people in the United States, deserve a certain level of dignity and rights?
Yes, they do deserve a level of dignity and right. They should not be tortured. They should not be harassed. But if I walk into your house, if I walk into Russia without proper authorities allowing me to do so, I will, and you punish me for that, I deserve what I get. If I break into your house and get caught, I deserve what I get. And it's unfortunate for these children that their parents are bringing them into this very volatile and dangerous situation.
Mr. Hayes, what about this, though? There are many people that are watching this that are going to say that a lot of immigrants themselves are the job creators. They create the jobs, not taking the jobs, especially there in Los Angeles. I gotta tell you, I'm a Los Angeles native myself, so I can tell you there's a lot of immigrants, both legal and illegal, who are the job creators. What do you say to those people?
I have no problem with that at all, but if they're here illegally, no, it's null and void. For example, if I rob the bank today, and then next week I start giving money out to people, to the poor, the homeless, building hospitals, does that absolve me of my crime? No, it does not, folks. It does not. And that is a problem. People, look, I can't go to Mexico or Guatemala or El Salvador or Russia or Persia or North Korea or China and do what these folks are doing here. And again, it's not their fault. It's the fault of my own federal government for not living up to the Constitution to protect us. We are a protected class, not because of our skin color, not because of our minority-majority status, but because of the cruel way in which immigrant people brought us into this country as slaves against our will to serve immigrants for almost 400 years. And look at the state of black people now in this country. Look at us. Is that right?
Mr. Hayes, unfortunately, right? I am out of time. We've got to leave that right there. But I do hope to have you back on. We got a lot more to talk about on this subject. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Ted Hayes, civil rights activist in Los Angeles.
You were just listening to Ted Hayes, activist and homeless advocate. He's a guest today on the Naked Truth Report. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells, and Ted is going to be our guest. And what did you think about what was being said? What did you think about what was being said? Did he sound reasonable? Did it make sense? Do we know the U.S. Constitution? Do we know the 14th Amendment? These are questions that need to be asked. Have they been asked and answered by our politicians? Are they properly answering the question? Who does the 14th Amendment apply to? Has the U.S. Supreme Court settled this issue? Has it settled this issue? Has the issue of anchor babies been settled by the U.S. Supreme Court? What do you think about that? Do you think that, let's see, Attorney General Sessions, should he bring the issue? I'm sure some people are going to bring up this issue of the legitimacy of anchor babies to the Supreme Court. I'm sure it's going to be working its way through the court. Don't you think? Do you think it's reasonable for people? Let me see. How should I put it? Could you go to another country illegally and have a child, and that child is a citizen of that country? How many countries allow that? That's the question. Are you familiar with these things? So Ted Hayes was talking about, as I said, Ted Hayes, he's a guest. He'll be coming on after I finish my monologue. But one of the things Ted Hayes does is he's an advocate for the homeless. He's an advocate for the homeless. He is on the streets of Los Angeles. He sees what's going on in L.A. more than most, definitely more than our politicians, definitely more than our talking heads that are making six figures to go on CNN and MSNBC and propose a position regarding immigration. They don't know what's going on in our border states like California and Texas. But people who are on the ground, they see it with their own eyes. They have empirical evidence, as you said. In fact, homelessness in L.A. County, I think it rose, 23%? Last year we had 46,874 homeless. In L.A. County this year, it's 58,000 homeless folks. And in fact, Ted Hayes is the one that told me, like, the new neighborhood for black folks is Skid Row. He's the one that informed me of that. The new neighborhood for black folks is Skid Row. Then when you read all these articles about homelessness, do they ever mention the fact, the interrelatedness, the interconnectedness between blacks being unemployed and homeless and illegal immigration? Do they ever connect those dots? If you listened to my show last week, you heard Peter Kirisnow talk about the data on the fact that illegal immigration adversely impacts black America. Black men specifically, all Americans generally, black men within working age, young black men specifically. Because why? Because illegal immigrants work jobs in industries that black men generally work in, like construction, like hospitality, like service industries. If you listened to my show last week with Peter Kirisnow, you would have heard the data. It's indisputable. What was the word he used? Unequivocal. So there's an interrelatedness, there's an interconnectedness between illegal immigration, not having a job, and homelessness. Homelessness, as I said, has risen to 23% this year. I want to give another data point. This is a very, very good data point. But first, I want to ask you, how does one assess the success or failure of a thing? How do you assess if something has been a success or a failure? How do you do that? You look at the evidence, right? The proof is in the pudding. You look at the data, you look at the evidence. That's how you assess if something is a success or a failure. So this is a data point that I want to give right now because, I love giving data. So one of the things is that I read an article that said that blacks in San Francisco are disproportionately unemployed. I'm going to read this. While San Francisco has the ninth highest general employment rate in the country, 79%, it also has the highest employment disparity between blacks and whites in the country. It's the highest disparity between blacks and whites in the country. San Francisco, California, the liberal bastion, Nancy Pelosi's district, the Mecca of illegal immigration. Take that data point in conjunction with what you heard last week from Peter Kirisnow from the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and it makes sense, right? It makes sense. There's another data point. If you can Google it yourself and find it in the Los Angeles Times. The UCLA did a report, and it said that blacks are facing a job crisis in Los Angeles. So we've got Los Angeles and San Francisco where blacks are suffering in terms of employment. Hey, wait, California is a liberal bastion. We are blue. We are liberal. But we're also the Mecca of illegal immigration. And, when you read these articles, this one about San Francisco, it is written in, let's see, the title is San Francisco Leads the Country in African American Employment Disparity. Can you imagine? This was in the Sacramento Bee. San Francisco leads the country in African American employment disparity. You read the article. Let me tell you, Google it, folks, and read it for yourself. You read the article, and they never bring up illegal immigration. They never bring it up. Most of these writers vote Democrat. Then, let's see, the other article is the Los Angeles Times. This is the actual quote from UCLA. This is the Los Angeles is in the throes of a black job crisis, the UCLA report says. California, Los Angeles, liberal California, the Mecca of illegal immigration. Blacks are in a job crisis. The other thing I want to say, after 8 years of Obama, can young adults afford homes in Los Angeles? After 8 years of Obama, can young adults, my parents during Jim Crow, were able to buy a house? Can young adults afford, during Jim Crow, my parents were able to buy a house during the 60s. And yet you've got these folks taking down statues and talking about white supremacy. This is so phony. And this is why I believe labels are meaningless and misleading. Labels are meaningless and misleading. Because what could be more white supremacist than the destruction of Black America? You cannot get more white supremacists than the destruction of Black America. And Booker T. Washington, if you've read his stuff, he says, do not focus on symbolism like throwing down statues. That's meaningless. It's empty. There's nothing there. Taking down statues is mere symbolism. There's no meat there. You're not biting into anything. Yet all up and down the mainstream media, all we hear about is white supremacy and statues being taken down from the Confederates. Confederate statues being taken down. This is meaningless. This is symbolism. It does nothing because I want to see money in Black folks' pockets. I want to see money in Black men's hands, right? That's substantial. That's significant. That makes a difference, right? All this other stuff is meaningless. Let me tell you something, folks. We have been talking about racism for 400 years, for 150 years, for 60 years, and we're still talking about it. And Cornel West and Van Jones and Michael Eric Dyson and all these other guys will talk about it for another 100 years. Joanne Reed, they'll talk about it for another 100 years. And Blacks will still be in a job crisis in Los Angeles and still be suffering a job crisis in San Francisco. But those talking heads on TV will be talking about racism for the next 100 years. It's just, it's just frustrating. Yes, it's disingenuous. It's insincere. It's phony baloney. And that's why this show is called The Naked Truth Report, because we're here to tell the truth, right, Josh? We're here to tell the truth. Should I go to my guest or should I keep talking? What do you think, Josh? Is Ted on the line? Huh? Okay, Ted. Welcome, Ted, to The Naked Truth Report. This is Ted Hayes, activist and homeless advocate. Ted Hayes, welcome, Ted, to The Naked Truth Report.
Hey, Kathleen. Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored that you would allow me the opportunity to express my viewpoints about this whole invasion, occupation of our country by these foreigners. So thank you very much, Kathleen. And you're right on, spot on with your commentary.
Oh, I appreciate it. There's another report that I want to mention, another data point that I want to give as a data girl. The average Black family will need 228 years to build the wealth of an average white family. Hey, why is that? We've been here 400 years.
Well, the bottom line is this. The 14th Amendment, which is the birthright citizenship of the freed slaves and their descended children for generations to come, as long as the United States Union shall not perish from the earth, has never been fully enforced as intended. Had the 14th Amendment citizenship of the freed slaves and their children been enforced, we wouldn't have this issue of the invasion occupation, which is coming primarily in the name of civil rights in our 14th Amendment birth certificate. We wouldn't have the incursion of Islam. We would not have the loss of jobs and other social injustices that goes on in the courts and the penal system. These things would not exist if the 14th Amendment was enforced. I'm not so concerned about jobs, housing, health care, education. All these things, yes, we have been denied even before the illegal immigration invasion began. This stuff, we've always been disproportionately represented in unemployment and housing and education and so forth and so on. So this all comes out of slavery. However, my most important issue is if they take our identity, our 14th Amendment identity, if we allow anchorism, that is anchor babies, to continue to have actual citizenship, as I said, it's presumed citizenship, if we allow it, then we will no longer exist as a people, and for sure, everything that should come to us will be gone to other people. So we got to, first of all, before we focus on jobs and all that, we've got to focus on who we are as a people in the United States Constitution.
Well, you see, the Democrats are already calling us people of color. You see, this people of color business is lumping us with other groups. We are not people of color. We are black Americans, the direct descendants of slaves. And I really wish that Democrats and liberals and whoever will stop. And it's all up and down. Everything you read, people of color. These people are nuts. We are not people of color. We are black. That means that we are there is no people of color America. That means we are lumped with every single other group, and we have had the same history as every single other group. That is not true. And this is why I'm so angry with these Democrats, okay? I cannot stand the Democratic Party. Am I making that clear?
You know, I can't stand the Republican Party more. I understand the Democrats. You know, the devil is out there going to knock on the door and all that. We expect the Democrats to be what they are. If anybody would just simply do a historical check of the Democratic Party, you'll find that the Democratic Party, this Democratic Party today, is the most racist political entity in the history of humankind, on par with the Nazis. Study it, you'll find it to be true. However, that's what they do. I'm more upset with the Republican Party because the Republican Party abandoned its mission to the nation via us. The Republican Party gave up on us in 1877 when they made what was called, look it up, folks, the Democrat-Republican Party compromise to settle the 1876 presidential campaign of Rutherford B. Hayes, Republican, and Samuel Tilden, the Democrat. And when they solved it, but by the President Hayes pulling the federal troops out of the South, that was the birth of Jim Crow. And the Republicans kept their mouths shut all the way up until Dwight David Eisenhower, when he went and did the Board of Education, the Brown versus Board of Education, and then he sent the federal troops, according to the 14th Amendment, into Little Rock, Arkansas, to ensure that black children get an education. You see, that's the issue. The Republicans feel like they don't need to work with us because they can win presidential elections without our vote, which is absolutely true. They've been doing it since 1964 when the Democratic Party labeled the Republican Party racist and made everybody think that Abraham Lincoln was Democrat and Republican. So it's the Republican Party at fault here. They're supposed to be the guardians. You see, they're the ones who've allowed this to go down. And until the Republican Party, or people call themselves Republican, have a rebirth and go back to what it really means to be Republican, you can kiss this country goodbye.
Well, you and I have discussed this several times before because I don't know the history as well as you do, but I do know that we are responsible for ourselves, okay? And when you have black Democrats leading other black Americans down to the abyss, down the toilet hole or whatever, you have black Democrats who are leading black Americans astray.
That's why, folks, while I am of African descent, my features are Negroid, black, etc., that is not my identity. And I teach black folks, you got to get off the color issue. You are a descendant of the chattel slaves. You have a super citizenship in the Constitution of the United States. Economic black development is not going to help you. Black United Front's not going to help you. Afrocentrism is going to help you. Not in the United States. It won't help you in Africa, but particularly not in the United States because it is not constitutional. But what is constitutional is that we are chattel slave descendants who have a special citizenship in the Constitution that no other people in the country have. Not because of our skin color, though it identifies us, but it's because of the unique experience by which we were brought into this country against our will, in chains, by immigrants to serve immigrants. You see, the immigrants came here willingly, hence white citizens. We didn't come here willingly. That's why civil rights is not for white people. is not for immigrants. You have your civil rights through Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. The 14th Amendment is a backdoor citizenship. It is for the chattel slave people. One more point on this. If we keep going by black, colored people, what happens is people like the gay community, minority communities, people who have skin color communities, rich white women who want to do business, they will claim the 14th Amendment, which says the clause is equal justice under the law clause.
Oh, equal protection under law. The equal protection clause. Well, actually, they already claim those things. We've seen it, right? Because who benefits most from affirmative action policies? And this is something that Ann Coulter talks about, and why I appreciate her. Because she talks about it is blacks who are the direct descendants of slaves that are supposed to be protected under the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment. And she talks about that other groups, like, this is the thing that I want to bring out. And this is the thing that I want conservatives to realize. Ever since the Civil Rights Act was signed, immediately, and I think one of the senators, I think his name was McCarthy, he immediately said he regretted allowing immigrants to come in by signing the Civil Rights Act. That allows immigrants from all over to come in over blacks and take the resources from those resources going to immigrants should be resources going to blacks. So when we talk about things like affirmative action, which is supposed to be affirmative action for black folks because their ancestors picked cotton for free for 150 years, right? But yet, I think white conservatives don't know that Democrats never give black folks anything. They never give us any money. You cannot get money from a Democrat if you're black. And that's why you have these unemployment numbers. That's why you have black folks who are unemployed. And the biggest recipients of affirmative action are white women and next Latinos, not blacks. We have never benefited from that. And one of the, an anecdote that I want to give is like when I went to Politicon about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, they had two, this is an anecdote. They had two, food trucks inside of Politicon. And they were like, I think they were illegal immigrants. They were not black. To get the food trucks for the black people who were serving their food, soul food, you had to go outside the venue, around the corner and over the fence to get the food from the black people serving in the food truck. Do you understand? That was symbolic of what it has always been with Democrats and blacks. Never give, and in fact, there's a movie where Robert De Niro says, never give the blacks any money. Where Robert De Niro's character plays, never give that's how Democrats have been with black folks. Never give blacks any money. Do you hear what I'm saying, Ted?
Yes, because they have an agenda to destroy us. That is their agenda, and subsequently to destroy the Union. They've never renounced it. They've never stopped that agenda. But see, again, I blame that on Republicans, and I also blame that on black representatives, ministers, particularly ministers, because they should know better of all people, and, of course, our black elected officials and our so-called civil rights leaders. They are supposed to talk about us being chattel slaves, descendants, not so much black people. That way, when a gay person or a minority person who's a legitimate immigrant or an illegal immigrant says, I have civil rights, you say, well, if your ancestors were slaves, chattel slaves, you came on a slave ship, and not the Mayflower, yes, you belong at this table. But if you did not come via the slavery, you have no quarter here. Forget about you. You could be as black as a black Nigerian can be black. But if you come here willingly, you are considered a white citizen being a willing immigrant. You have no part with us who are chattel slave descendants. And they don't like us use that term because it really narrows the focus to where Abraham Lincoln originally intended it to be. That's why they hate Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump said, I'm going to end illegal immigration because it hurts black people worse than anybody else. He said also, it's the Democrats that got you messed up. That's why they hate Trump. Because they was going to do us. If Hillary Clinton would have won that election, they was going to do us chattel slave descendants completely out of existence.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Well, let me ask you, Ted, how do you feel about taking phone calls? Are you open to the idea?
Sure.
Okay, let me say that if you'd like to call in and join the conversation, and if you have a question for Ted Hayes, who's the activist, homeless advocate, the number is 818-870-5752. Please call in. We'll be right back.
The elected officials refuse to address the problem. The black elected officials refuse to address the problem. My own congressman refuses to address the problem. And I think the problem is black folks see all minorities as allies. And this is not the case. These people are not here for our common good. They're here for their own good. Where I don't have any ill will towards anybody, I also want to look out for my race. I'm a black American. I've never used a hyphen. But I will refuse to turn my back on my race and see what's going on in South Central to my people and let these people come in here and just take over. I'm not going to sit back and watch it. And I think it's a terrible thing, a horrendous thing for anybody to see this going on and say, well, he's a minority like me, so I won't speak up. I don't care where he comes from. The key to this whole thing is stop the denial, stop the alliances of, in other words, he's a minority like me, so I can't speak up against him. If this was white folks committing these lynchings to us in South Central, what's going on, there would be an outrage in this country. We have had firebombs thrown through windows. We have had people's cars burned in the driveway because they happened to move into the wrong communities. We had a lady who moved to East LA, came to the state from the South, not knowing what East LA was. It was an all-Hispanic community. She wasn't there one day. We had another man who was burned out of his house in Torrance last year. We had 5 murders in Hawaiian Gardens just because the people were black. This would not be tolerated if this was white on black crime. But the fact that these people come here, and it's the numbers, sir, it's the numbers. They come here in the numbers, they build up the Hispanic community, and they get this sense of power against us. And there are race riots in the schools every day in Los Angeles. It never makes the media. The black kids are being run out of the schools every day and told to go back to Africa. It never makes the media. We are having people who are being discriminated against on every avenue of society, economic, schools, even in our prisons now. They have drawn lines, and our prisoners in California are being beat and harassed and raped by Hispanic gang members who recently arrived here because of the numbers. My answer to you, sir, would be we don't need any new laws. Enforce the ones we got.
Yeah, did you hear that? We don't need any new laws. Enforce the ones we've got. You know, I'm going to open up the phone lines for folks to call in and speak with Ted Hayes. He's the homeless advocate and activist, and he's on the streets of Los Angeles, and he knows what's going on more than most. The phone line, 866-870-5752. If you'd like to talk to Ted, call in. That was the late... Okay, that was the late, great Terry Anderson that you just heard. That was his testimony before Congress. So, Ted, what would you like to say?
I knew Terry Anderson. We were friends and associates on the battlefront. Brilliant guy. He was really right on top of things. And what he did was correctly castigated the African American leaders. And these people, in my opinion, are the same spirit that helped to put African people on the slave ships to the Americas. So all they care about is their money and their power and their perks. In fact, it is whispered behind closed doors in Congress on Capitol Hill, the Congressional Black Caucus, which touts itself as the conscience of the Congress. They said the Congressional Black Caucus is the special ed class on Capitol Hill. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, I can imagine that.
They don't take them serious. Because name me one law, Kathleen, that you know of that the Congressional Black Caucus or any black congressman, name me a law, a congressional law that they have gotten passed. They've signed on the law, but they haven't. I don't know of any that they've actually authored. There's like 40 of them in the Congress.
Yeah, I think when you go to their website, like their greatest achievement is like getting President Obama elected, and then something about Nixon or something. Anyway,
and resolutions. Yeah. So no, they are, as far as I'm concerned, they're greater enemies than the Democratic Party.
Oh, that's what I say too. Okay, yeah. So you know what? That's what I say too. That's what I believe. You want to take a call? We're going to take a call from Mick. Is that the name, Mick? Hi, Mick.
Hi, this is Mike from Los Angeles.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, great show. How long have you guys been broadcasting?
This is my third show.
Oh, excellent show. You got my support. The reason I'm calling is because it's refreshing to hear you guys talk, because I've always been under the impression that the laws enacted to redress the wrongs done to black people have somehow been co-opted, misinterpreted, misapplied, and they're using them in ways they were never meant to be used. And they're not helping black people anymore.
Well, that's our fault, young man. That's the fault of people like you and me and Kathleen, those of us who say we see. We have not done our job. You see, we cannot expect the Democrats to do right. You cannot expect the devil to do right.
No, it's not. It's not my fault. I'm not old enough. Listen, the civil rights people should have done things properly. As far as I'm concerned,
I'm just thinking in general. I know it's not your fault. You were just a little baby when all this started. All I'm saying is that we have got to start looking at ourselves as so-called Republicans and conservatives and patriots of America, and we've got to start getting aggressive and stop being so much on the defense.
Yeah.
So study the 14th Amendment, young man. Go to my website, tedhayes.us, or I'll tell you what, go to the THC 14th .us, and you'll see the explanation of the 14th Amendment.
Do you think the Kennedy Amendment also, which incorporated the anchor baby concept, has a lot to do with this problem as well?
Of course. Well, see, as you know, I am a civil rights homeless activist. And one day when I was in South Central Los Angeles at a couple meetings, a young black man walked up to me. He was a Marine Corps veteran, and he says, Ted, we appreciate your work with the homeless and with the veterans who are homeless, but you're not going to be able to help the homeless peoples until you deal with the illegal aliens. And I know he was talking about primarily the Hispanic Latinos. And see, up until that point, I was an icon in the Hispanic Latino community. They loved me. I used to march with them shouting "Si Se Puede." I used to organize with them. I had a world-famous cricket team made up primarily of Hispanic Latino boys, Mexicans from Compton. So they loved me. We fed Hispanic children every Christmas at the Dome Village all the time. They loved me. But when I realized that my Marine buddy James Spencer was right, that I can't help the homeless as long as the government's focused on illegal aliens and so forth and so on, when I came out publicly, I have been a pariah in the Hispanic Latino community. Yeah. They hate me because of this.
Yeah.
And if you got Hispanic friends like that, and you and if you think you're getting along with them, you question illegal immigration, and you're going to lose your Hispanic friend in general speaking.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, Mike.
They don't mind you supporting them, Cinco de Mayo and all their things. But as black people, whenever we don't say we're against, we just say we are for, they get very mad at us.
Okay, Mike, thanks a lot. Why don't we take a call now from Vic and the 14th. He wants to talk about the 14th Amendment. Hi, Vic.
I want to tell you, I love you, Kathleen and Ted. I have great admiration for your point on remarks. I just can't believe I finally heard someone say the truth the way it needs to be said. And you were right about the Republicans. They don't want to articulate the truth. They are the guardians, and shame on them.
Shame on them. And see, and look, and they've told me why. The top guys, even in what's his name, Ted Cruz's office, his chief deputy. We had this conversation, and basically he said it's not worth it to us to work with black people because black people are basically a lost people. We win elections, presidential elections, without the black vote. So why should we spend our time focusing on a lost people and alienate the growing Hispanic Latino vote? They've told me that.
That's why you have to respect Trump. But, I've tried to talk to my African-American friends. They won't listen. They just won't listen.
Because you got to understand something, sir. Malcolm X made it very clear in 1963 when he noticed that Dr. King, Roy Wilkins, and John Lewis and the Negro leadership at that time was working with the Democrats on creating a civil rights march, which made King very famous. And what Malcolm was saying was, he says, y'all hanging out with the party that held us as 245 years as chattel slaves. They Jim Crowed us, the Ku Klux Klan. He says, you're being bamboozled. But they call Malcolm a racist and and a divider, but sure enough, 50 years later, look at what has happened. Malcolm was right because the Republicans and the black leadership decided to surrender and give in.
And he was right, but we need to not give up, and they need to articulate it. What do you mean that it's a worthless cause? It is not a worthless cause. My God. Well,
you know what? Thanks to Americans like Kathleen Wells, okay, who is bringing this out like Terry Anderson did in the early days. She's bringing this out, and you guys need to tell everybody you know. Tell black people, particularly. If you get an argument, hey, look, man, I don't want to argue with you. Just go listen to Kathleen's show, and you'll see what's going on. But believe me, guys, real soon, black folks are going to wake up, and that's why they hate Donald Trump. Not black people, but the Democrats hate Trump.
Of course.
Because Trump said, I'm going to end illegal immigration because illegal immigration hurts black people more than anybody else, and that's what blew them away about Donald Trump.
I pray that Pastor Roberts is right and that God is on his side, and I also pray that they'll heed that call that you're talking about. But I'm going to tell you something. It must have been by the grace of God that I put this channel on at this time. I never listened to the radio. And I'm going to go back to church tomorrow morning and thank God that I heard you. And I love you, Kathleen.
Thank you. Okay, why don't we take David? He wants to talk about statutes. Yeah. I guess the Confederate statutes. Okay, hi, David.
Yeah, hello, Kathleen, Ted. Hey, it's great to hear you online because this is the truth has been, the public has been blinded by not knowing the truth about many things. And, yeah, the statutes is one thing. But, with respect to General Lee, what people don't realize, if you look at the history of General Lee, is that during the Civil War, he actually wrote to his wife about the terrible thing and the inhumane situation with slavery. He was an abolitionist. He was against slavery, and in fact, when his father-in-law died, he freed the slaves owned by his father-in-law. And he wrote that he, as one man, could not change the society of the South at that moment. So if people really knew the truth about his feelings and so forth of what was happening, because the Civil War was not only fought over slavery, there was other complexities with regard to taxation and so forth. And going to Ted's point, because this is the same thing, with respect to the Hispanics and illegal immigration, people don't know the truth. Even Cesar Chavez was against illegal immigration.
Exactly.
Because it hurts wages. It does many things, but also in the Hispanic community alone, illegal immigration hurts the legal immigrants.
Exactly.
Legal immigrants here because of education and everything else that gets watered down.
Right.
And
absolutely right.
Until such time as the Hispanics and the African Americans know the truth, they're going to be blinded by the Democrats who have bamboozled all of them.
Absolutely.
On your point about the iconoclasm of the Confederate statues, names, flags, and all that stuff, this has nothing to do with the fight that white people have with white people over black people, which is what the Civil War was really all about, white people fighting with white people. It has always been that way since the signing of the Declaration of Independence, white people fighting with white people over black people. However, what you're seeing now, since Barack Obama was president, what you're seeing now is a philosophy, a foreign philosophy from Eastern Europe called socialism. And this is how I'm going to prove it to you. Whether Lee was an outright racist or not is irrelevant. Or any of those guys, all irrelevant. Okay, what's really relevant here is if you're going to follow iconoclasm all the way through in its purest form, that means not only taking down the Washington Monument, because George Washington had slaves, he died with slaves, and renaming Washington another name, but it also means to get rid of the Declaration of Independence. Why? Because 47 signers of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were slaveholders. So therefore, if you're going to take down something, take the Declaration of Independence down. This is not coming from Southern Confederates. This is not coming from Northern Yankees. This is coming from the Russian socialist who is controlling the Democratic Party. As you recall, Democrats are socialists. They're the ones colluding with Putin. Remember, Barack Obama said to tell the Prime Minister of Russia to tell Alexander Putin, he said Tell Putin, when I get reelected, I will be able to help him. What does that mean, folks? Hillary Clinton gave 20% of our weapons-grade uranium to Russia. They're putting this stuff on Trump because they are the ones. You ever hear that statement, the devil come in your ear and say, hey, there's the devil over there? That's what it's about, folks. This ain't got nothing to do with us. It's got to do with the socialist movement coming in to destroy our country. It doesn't matter how racist the Confederates were in the statutes. That's irrelevant. What they're trying to do is destroy the country, and the way you get them say that you're talking about removing the Declaration of Independence. Why? Because 47 signers of the Declaration of Independence were slaveholders. That's where the conversation needs to begin, and that puts an end to iconoclasm.
Okay.
Am I still on? I just have to say I fully agree with you, because if the Europeans and the Russians can take away the Declaration of Independence, you take away the foundation of what has made the United States the greatest country on earth and has given the smallest person the opportunity for prosperity.
You know, I have documentation. You can look it up yourself, and I'll send it to you if you email me, ted@tedhayes.us, where the Communist Party, American Communist Party, said in the 1930s, we will take the United States down through the Negroes, through their anger about Jim Crow and their pain about slavery. We will put upon them our social programs, and we will take America down. And that's what's going on. They're using something in this country where white people fighting white people over black people, okay, to tear our country down. Because we need to heal black and white people. We need to close that gap so that this vector from Europe can no longer affect us. But that's what they're after, the Declaration of Independence. Follow the thinking all the way through. That's where you start the conversation with all the people who take down the statue, say, no. Let's start with the Declaration of Independence, because 47 signers of that first law of this nation were slaveholders. You end the conversation right there.
Okay, we'll take a call from Carlos now regarding illegal immigration. Hi, Carlos.
Hi. Well, listen, Mr. Hayes, I talked to you several years ago, and I used to quite often talk to Terry Anderson also. But, listen. This whole massive influx of illegal aliens, there's an agenda behind it.
Of course it is.
Remember, Jacob Javits in 1964 made a statement, we need to have 500 more thousand immigrants here or whatever. He meant illegal. And so did Kennedy. These people were working for the international plutocracy. They wanted to bring massive amounts of people here for cheap labor, but also to pit one group against the other. And that falls into the agenda you were just describing about socialism and communism and the international plutocracy destroying our country through pitting one group against the other. The worst thing we can do is be at each other's throats. We have to focus our attention on who behind the scenes is manipulating all these different factors to destroy our country. That's what it's all about. The collapse of the capitalist system to bring in a one world government ruled by socialism.
Well, you know, the United States, much people don't realize, the United States was born with a potentially fatal birth wound. It's called chattel slavery. The United States government did not initiate chattel slavery. They inherited chattel slavery from the British Empire on July 4, 1776. And that is what Abraham Lincoln called a house divided against itself. He wasn't talking about black and white people divided. That's been a misnomer, created a lot of racial confusion that was unnecessary. The house of the United States is divided between white people over black people. The day that white people can heal and their understanding of who they are in the United States of America is the day that the wound will begin to close. And then when white people make peace with white people, they can make peace with black people. And then when black people make peace with black people who put us on the slave ships in the first place, then as Dr. King said, I dream that one day the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will sit together at the table of brotherhood. And ladies and gentlemen, Kathleen Wells, I believe that we are now just entering into that day.
Oh, well, you know, I don't like Martin Luther King so much because it's just mere rhetoric. The man was only, 39 years old when he died? I need something with meat on the bones, okay? I don't need...
That is meat on the bones.
That's just rhetoric. It's just rhetoric.
What he's talking about is that black and white people sit down together, work this stuff out so we can have prosperity equally, equitably across the table. But as long as we're shouting at white people about how racist they are and how they need to change, how black people are not owning up to some responsibility, nothing is going to change in this country. It goes both ways. It's not just about white people, but it's black people too.
Oh, I think blacks need to work on blacks. Stop talking about white people. We need to work on us. Period.
Exactly my point. And that's when we have got to understand who we are in the United States Constitution. We are not black people. We are United States super citizens in the Constitution of the United States. We happen to look this way.
Say just a little point here. We need to be selective as to what white people, blacks, and Latinos talk to. The NAACP, for instance, the innovators and the founders of that were white people, but they were communists. The Schiff family, the also the Warbirds, and also the Rabbi Weiss were the ones that founded. These were white people. The NAACP, they were communist people.
Of course they were. They were Ashkenazi Jews who created the NAACP. They were socialists, communists, and they used the freed slaves like around 1900, and they used the plight of the freed slaves, our gullible selves, to fight the capitalist structure of this country. But can I make one point clear, Kathy, before we get off the air? And I don't mean no offense to my Hispanic brother or Latino brother there, but
you have to be very quick. You have like 30 seconds.
Black people and Hispanic people are the same. Hispanic people are white people. According to the birth certificate, they are Caucasian. They are not black folks. And we need to get that cleared up, folks, because one group came into the country willingly. Hispanics came here willingly. You know, we were brought here against our will as slaves to serve the people who are here willingly. Just want to get that cleared up.
Okay. You know what? We only got a few more minutes, and I want to do some housekeeping. I want to say, listen, this is the Naked Truth Report, and you can go to my website, and I've listed some of the immigration videos on the website that I watch, and you can get informed that way. Also, you can go to the Naked Truth Report Facebook page, and, you know, I keep it updating. It's a good thing. Also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's the Kathleen Wells Show. Kathleen Wells Show YouTube channel. So check that out. Also, you can follow me on Twitter, which is Wells Kathleen, and I appreciate it. And what I like to do is to end the show with a love song. I like to end the show with a love song for everyone with deep roots in America, deep roots in California, deep roots in Los Angeles. So this is my love song to you. Bye-bye.